Hello everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Enriching our brains with new and valuable information improves our ability to think, analyze, and process the world around us. Education and learning is important because it broadens our knowledge, and this knowledge then opens our minds to new perspectives, ideas, beliefs, and cultures. Good morning, everyone. I am Vandana Revankar, Assistant Professor, Department of Business Administration. Wholeheartedly welcome everyone to this Corporate Academia Connect on e-business. I hope all of you are safe and sound. A few instructions for all of you. Keep your device audio and video on mute. Any queries can be posted in the chat box, and a feedback link will be shared towards the end, which will be considered for attendance. Before we begin, all of you need to know that this novel concept, Corporate Academia Connect, is the brainchild of our beloved principal, Dr. S. Anil Kumar sir. Besides getting the overview of the concepts taught in the class, students need to get exposed to the fact how the concept is actually put into practice. So in this regard, sir had an idea to connect the academia with the corporate through case study experience with the experts who has a practical exposure in that area. So we thank sir for giving us this opportunity to organize this event today. We have among us a very experienced and learned friend of Dr. Anupama ma'am, who would help us to understand the concept and importance of e-security in the subject e-business or e-commerce, which is the syllabus for 4th SEM BCom course. So we are gathered here today to witness this Corporate Academia Connect. To begin with, I request our 4th SEM student, BCom student, Ms. Atufa, to welcome the August gathering. Over to you, Atufa.
Thank you, ma'am. Good morning, everyone. I am Atufa Rahmat from 2nd BCom C section here with an opportunity to welcome the August gathering on Corporate Academia Connect on the subject e-commerce today. E-commerce has extensively matured in the last decade and it continues to grow fast each day. The recent outbreak of COVID-19 has dramatically changed the current business climate. Many are being overwhelmed with uncertainty. Unfortunately for some, the future of business looks grim. For stores that have closed their doors for the time being, there are still viable methods of generating income. Having a reliable e-commerce platform can help to create stable revenue and save your business. If you want to be a leader who attracts quality people, the key is to become a person of quality yourself. One such great leader with us today, I wholeheartedly welcome our beloved principal, who is a great leader, motivator, and a Best Teacher awardee, Dr. S. Anil Kumar sir, for this webinar. Sir, you are a guiding light to all of us. Welcome you, sir. Today, we have amidst us an eminent speaker who is helping all of us to understand the concept of e-security in e-commerce as a subject. I wholeheartedly welcome the resource person, Sri Hari K. Patibanda sir, entrepreneur, startup enthusiast, former senior manager, global IT PMO, Unilever, for today's Corporate Academia Connect. Sir, welcome you to this webinar. I would like to welcome the HODs, Professor Jagdish Sir, Department of Business Administration, Dr. M.S. Nagaraj Sir, Department of Commerce, Dr. Shalini N. Ma'am, Coordinator of Second Year BCom, Dr. Anupama Ma'am, Webinar in Charge. Subject teachers following Professor Yellappa Sir, Professor Gokul Sir, heartful welcome to you all. I wholeheartedly welcome the class teachers of 6th SEM, C, D, and E sections, Professor Vijayalakshmi ma'am, Professor Shakila ma'am, and Professor Sindhu Shri ma'am from Department of Commerce for their support. Welcome you all. I welcome all faculty members of BCom and BBA for the constant encouragement and support to the webinar. Welcome you all. Very importantly, the students' fraternity without whom this program is not fruitful. I wish a red carpet welcome to all BCom 4th SEM, C, D, E sections who have joined this webinar. Welcome you all. Hope this webinar will help all of us to understand the conceptual clarity in the subject matter. I request all the students to keep the queries ready to pose after the session. Once again, I welcome you all. I place my sincere thanks to our HOD, Dr. M.S. Nagaraj sir, our coordinator, Dr. Shalini N. ma'am, and my class teacher, Vijayalakshmi ma'am, for having organized this webinar and giving me this opportunity to speak on the occasion. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Ms. Atufa. Welcome you too for this wonderful session. I also thank my aviation students who volunteered to join this event today. Welcome you all to the session. We must really appreciate one fact about our resource person for the day, Mr. Pratibandha. The moment we requested him to address our students, he immediately agreed to it, keeping aside all his personal engagements, only for the fact that students should be benefited, and he considers students as our nation builders. We at SSMRV College deem it our privilege and honor to have you with us, sir. We request you to guide our students and be associated with us in future as well. Now, I request Miss Christina, BCom student, to introduce our resource person to the gathering. Over to you, Christina.
Good morning, everyone. I am Christina D from second year BCom, and it's my privilege to have been asked to introduce our resource person for today, Mr. Hari K. Pratibandha. Mr. Hari K. Pratibandha is a successful IT professional and entrepreneur with 18 plus years of experience in progressive leadership roles across project or portfolio management, IT innovation, change, transformation, and risk management. He has rich international experience in leading cross functional teams to deliver complex programs and transformation initiatives. Sound commercial acumen and proven capability to engage and influence various stakeholders to deliver results. Proven partnership and senior leadership engagement skills in fostering collaboration for getting the job done. Sir has skills and expertise in the areas of project program management, portfolio management, business partnering, governance, financial management, IT strategy, BO engagements, risk and assurance, software development, IT delivery and support, business intelligence, talent development, supplier management, change or transformation relational management, and artificial intelligence or machine learning. Sir is an entrepreneur, startup enthusiast. He has pursued multiple innovative ideas and entrepreneurial opportunities, applying advanced machine learning techniques and developing profitable ideas which he is presently working on. Sir has conceptualized development of an application to apply machine learning techniques for analyzing tumor-related MRI scans, determine positive or negative outcomes, speed up detection and accuracy, integrate the artificial intelligence or machine learning algorithm with the hospital management systems to enable smooth workflow. Sir has also conceptualized development of a B2B commerce site for farmers, vegetable markets, and cold storage units to create opportunities for selling produce at various market for demand or supply and enhance farmers' profits. Leverage availability of cold storage units for storage and distribution to extend life of produce. apply machine learning techniques to predict demand at various markets. Sir has worked in various roles in corporates across the globe. Naveer is consulting a startup firm based in Bangalore, Unilever Singapore and Bangalore as head of IT PMO. Unilever is the second largest CPG business in the world, operating in 120 plus countries with an annual revenue of 50 plus billion pounds. Regional project manager at APAC at MENA IT Risk and Compliance Office Singapore. Assistant manager IT Assurance Team Genpact Hyderabad. Sir is a qualified professional in the areas of artificial intelligence or machine learning, advanced certification from IIIT Hyderabad, India. Project management professional from PMI USA, certified internal auditor from the IIA USA, certified information systems auditor from ISACA USA, ITEL Foundation IT Service Management from ISEB UK, certified implementer from DSI UK, Chartered Accountancy Intermediate from ICAI India, Bachelor's in Science and Honours Mathematics and Computers from Sri Satya Sai Institute of Higher Learning, India. Sir, we are very happy to have you amidst us as a resource person for today. We are looking forward to listening and learning from you. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our beloved principal, Dr. S. Anil Kumar, our HOD, Professor Jagdish Sir, and Dr. Anupama Ma'am for providing me with this wonderful opportunity. Over to you, sir. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. I request Mr. Hari K. Pratibandha sir to take over the session now.
Thank you, Dr. Vandana, and thank you, Dr. Anupama, for inviting me to this wonderful session. It's always a pleasure to speak to the students on these interesting topics. And thank you, Christina, for your lovely introduction. You've done pretty well. I'm feeling quite proud of your introduction. So let me just quickly get to the presentation. You just should be seeing the presentation in a minute. Okay. Are you able to see the screen?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, cool. Okay, before I start, if you have any questions, you can directly ask in the audio or maybe use the Google Meet console, Q&A console, to ask your questions, okay? Now, we're living in very interesting times. E-commerce is actually seeing a fantastic boom right now due to COVID. More people are sitting at home than any other period in the history of mankind. And e-commerce is actually thriving right now, okay? So this is a very interesting topic to discuss and very apt for the current moment. So I have a short agenda for you. So we'll quickly look at e-commerce and the types of e-commerce. The number of types are actually growing well these days. Then we'll also look at the security of it and what you can do to be safe while engaging in e-commerce transactions on the internet. Okay, there's a bit of knowledge around the security part, but let's go further with the e-commerce. Now, at a very simple level, e-commerce is basically any digital transaction on the internet. Okay, there are three components to this. One is the what they call the clients or end users, or we also call them endpoints from a technical term. And then there's a communication channel, which is usually the internet. Okay, and then there is a service provider. I'm sure there will not be anyone who has not done an e-commerce transaction here. It's so common these days. And there are different kinds of services, and we are seeing a boom in that different. We're also seeing new business models, and we're seeing a boom in different kinds of services. The latest being COVID tests and also online medical consultation. Now, the 6 points to keep in mind when we are doing any e-commerce transaction from both an endpoint, from end user like us point of view, and as well as a business point of view, is these 6 things. Confidentiality, which means the information is entirely only seen by those people who need to see the information. Integrity means a transaction has not been modified in any way. Availability is more about the transaction is able to be completed fully. Authentication means verification of identity, basically. Non-repudiation is confirmation that the transaction has been completed, which is basically receiving an acknowledgement from the service provider to say that the transaction has been completed. Now, this is an important part. If this is not completed, it's generally considered the transaction has not been successful, right? And then privacy. Privacy is making sure that our personal information is not compromised in any way, either during the transaction or after the transaction. It could be a year after the transaction, but still privacy should not be compromised. Now, this is another example of e-commerce flow where this is a B2B e-commerce flow. I'll show you several examples of B2B and all of these. But by and large, there are different types of e-commerce, and both the parties could change. You know, you can have a business here, you can have business on the left-hand side or right-hand side. You can have consumer on the left-hand side and government on the and say business on the other side. There can also be a consumer on the other end as well. As long as it's a digital transaction where there is a transfer of fund, then that is called as a e-commerce flow. Okay. Now, the kind of services that we are seeing in e-commerce are growing. Okay. Now, the easiest one to understand is e-commerce, business to consumer, or B2C we call it. By and large, the vast amount of internet that we would come across is B2C. Okay, we as an end users, Amazon, Flipkart, anything you see, Swiggy, all of them are B2C. There's also another kind called business to business. So India Mart is extremely popular in India for that matter. So businesses often buy, like your university can buy from India Mart all the stationery that you need, all the materials for your education, like books, like chalks, like blackboards, like any projectors, any electrical equipment. This is basically a wholesale market. Again, Amazon is basically there in all the categories. You will see that. But this is also a big chunk of business. And as per various publications, B2B constitutes the biggest component of e-commerce globally. It's way bigger than B2C. But because B2B happens between two businesses, we don't really see this happening unless you work in a corporate or unless you work in any small or medium-sized business. Okay. This third part is actually consumer to business. This is where consumer sells to business. Now, this could be in various forms. Like Facebook is a classic example of a C2B, where the more you use Facebook, the more business advertisements we click. You know, there is an advertisement about hotels, there's advertisement of various photography. If you're interested, they use a lot of photography, a lot of different websites. So the consumer to business is basically consumer engaging businesses, or like the minute you click advertisement, that's a C2B activity. Similarly, Amazon, there's a program called Amazon Launchpad, for example. So, or there's an Amazon Weavers or a handloom area. We can actually subscribe, we can actually register there, and we can sell them both to consumers. It's a C2C as well as consumer to business. Okay. So there are several of them as well. Blog, freelancer. Freelancer is where someone like me can sell services to businesses, and they will get paid by the hour or paid by the total amount of work that's been done in the package. Then there's a consumer to consumer. This is basically all your auction sites like eBay, OLX, Quikr, right? You can put some of your old products on sale. That's a consumer to consumer category, right? They're not very big in terms of the overall volume or sales, but they do have an important contribution. Again, Amazon plays an important role there. It's a fairly big market for it. Similarly, Facebook as well. You will see a lot of buy-sell advertisements or buy-sell groups where you can post to saying, I'm interested in selling my old vehicle. Anybody interested, please contact me. So that's a consumer to consumer aspect. Now, on top of that, there are some other models which is called P2P. These are peer-to-peer models. Airbnb, for example, is one where if you're having a home in some countryside or even in the city, you can put up some rooms for service like a hotel. You know, you can earn some money from it, right? And then there's an Uber. Uber in India, if you have any vehicle and if you are looking to earn some extra money, you can hire a driver and get your vehicle registered for Uber service, so you can earn some money there. Then there's a last model called G2B. This is government to business. So this is actually quite popular. E-tendering, e-auctions, e-reverse auctions. Like for example, the Indian government auctioned the coal blocks. All the coal blocks, all the mines, the telephone spectrum, right? All of that is basically government to business model. There's another variant which we use called m-commerce. It's basically any of these model, which when done through mobile is called m-commerce. It's not a different model per se. It's just it's basically commerce or a specific endpoint. Okay. Now let me show you some examples of various providers. Some of this. Okay, let me just go back for a minute. Now, when we talk of all these different models, the kind of revenue that we generate varies. Okay, there's a different model in B2C. Like when you buy from Amazon, it's a straight purchase. It's a cash to cash transaction straight away. But in all the other models, we have various kinds of revenue models. Ads, for example, right? C2B is basically ads, like in Facebook or in YouTube. The more you see, people can get money, the consumer can get money, or businesses can advertise in your specific channel. Right? Then there's an affiliate programming. Affiliate programming means I knew a blogger in Bangalore. She lived in Prestige, Shantiniketan, that area. She's a foodie. Basically, she has a blog where she's attracting almost 15 to 20,000 users per month. So a number of restaurants invite her to review, and then she puts links to the restaurant or to various items they can purchase from Amazon if they are looking to build, make their own dishes. So there's an affiliate code, and every time someone buys from this affiliate code, she would get some part of it. It's usually 1% or 1.5%, but they would get that kind of money into her because she directed the audience to there. Then there's a pay-per-view. This is like your Play Store movies. I'll show you examples of which. Play Store movies or Apple movies or YouTube rent movies, where this is mostly based on viewership. YouTube, Play Store, iOS Store, Book My Show also has a stream called Book My Show Stream. This is an example. Subscription is usually for magazines, for newspapers, etc. Commissions is an interesting aspect. Commissions is an old term, but in modern days it's called affiliate, where e-commerce is concerned. Commissions are mostly used in insurance areas, like if you're buying insurance from LIC online, if you're buying insurance from Star Health or any other health insurance or motor vehicle insurance online, then the transaction is completed online. The referral or the middleman gets a commission, and this is usually offline. This is not part of the transaction. This is not online, but they get a commission offline, right? So this is restricted to very few areas, but many are shifted to affiliate. Some of the older models like insurance, etc., still run on this. Featured listings is basically positioning a particular brand or sale predominantly on your website. I'll show you an example. You will see this quite regularly. Maybe the term is not familiar. Sponsorships as well is predominantly common in video and audio streaming like podcasts, where someone will pay for the sponsorships. I'll show you each of these examples, okay? Now let's talk of the ads. Now when you search this mobile phone, for example, you want to find a mobile phone, right? And you can see all the different ads that come up from different websites, from Samsung, Amazon, gadgets. So this is your first model. This is basically ads, okay? Now every time you click on this, Google will collect some small percentage on successful, not a successful sale. Every time you click on this, Google will collect some funds. It's usually 1,000 per 1,000 views. It's pretty large. It's like in India, it's like 3 cents per 1,000 views. I think that's the rate for Google. So if you get 1 million views, you're probably looking at some fund. Otherwise, it's too small. Okay. Then the second one is affiliate. This is where experts can refer to products on the web, and they earn some money if someone buys it. A lot of food channels, a lot of photography channels, a lot of these specialized hobby channels, for example, they use this a lot. Okay, they use this a lot. So every time I buy a product from their link, not only will I get a 10% discount from using an affiliates program, the person who refers will also get about 1%, 1.5%. Different sites have different rates, but usually it's 1 to 4%. 4% is maybe an upcoming channel, upcoming site. Some of the established ones are in the lower range. So both Amazon and Flipkart have it. You can actually, if you already run an existing blog or anything, you can actually promote a particular product and you can gain some money on this. Then this is a pay per view. So you can see rental. You can view this X number of days, X number of times, or maybe usually it's 1 or 2 times. So this is called the pay per view. This is again increasingly, especially in COVID time, this channel has seen big growth. A lot of new movies. I don't know if you follow, say Wonder Woman 1984, for example. It was directly released onto pay per view. It did not even go to theatrical release. So this is another way of earning money. Then you got the subscription model. This is Times of India. You can see in the top it says 600 rupees per annum, unlimited. So in this subscription model, you usually don't see advertisements, but it's another way for businesses to earn with less invasive methods. Advertisements often are quite invasive. There's a lot of tracking involved as well. So this is another model. Now the other ones are commissions. Again, there's nothing to show in commissions, but so this is called feature listing. You see the big Realme Narzo, for example, right? That's a feature listing. Feature listing means the particular product or a brand or something is positioned predominantly on the home page or in a particular section. Okay, this is usually paid. As e-commerce sites do paid, but if you take Android stores, etc., they do based on products that sell well. So whichever product sells well, they want to promote. It's an automated promotion. So this is called feature listing. Feature listing varies in different ways. Different channels have different models, but this is an easy way to understand. So Google Store, iOS App Store, Amazon, all of these have this predominantly. Okay. The last one is sponsorships. Sponsorships are predominant in podcasts and video calls. So here is a channel that I follow on the internet. It's a photography specialization. Right. So you can see the KEH camera is a sponsor for this. So what they do is they'll pick up some of the cost of producing this content. I don't know the amounts. This really varies by sponsor and the amount of audience one attracts. Okay. So sponsorship is quite common in like it's the same like what you see our cricket IPL teams being sponsored, but in e-commerce it's predominantly there in audio, video models. Is there anything else? I can't think of any other areas at this stage, but there could be a few more. Okay. So this is the various revenue models. One of the things to remember is this, in some of these, like in ads, like in subscription or commissions or feature listings or sponsorships, this is not mostly transactional. This is mostly periodical. So in advertisements, for example, the payout is usually monthly, or assuming you reach a certain number of views. Okay. But same with subscription, right? You pay on a monthly basis or you pay on an annual basis. Feature listings as well, it's more like a period. I'm going to promote my period for 3 days, this is a price. 5 days is another price. 1 month is another price. Right? So the transaction models is slightly different. They're not just transactional, they could be daily, they could be periodical, and they're mostly not to credit cards, they're usually to a bank account. In some of the cases like ads, there's even a verification depending on how much advertisements you're getting. There's some physical verification of the individual as well. Okay. Now, these are all the various cloud providers for e-commerce. Okay, I'm showing this just to tell you that The most recent trend these days is what you call as a ready e-commerce players. Shopify is a huge example. If you want to sell, there are a lot of people who are selling homemade dishes these days, right? Now, instead of actually building an entire website from ground up, you can use ready-made templates on any of these sites. All you'll do is you'll just add your products you say for selling. It could be anything. It could be clothes, it could be pickles, it could be curries, it could be food, right? Anything for that matter. You can just use a ready-made template to build it. So you don't need to know coding. You don't need to know technology. All you do is sign it up, understand the terms and conditions and the financial aspects, and you get ready to build. So YouTube, for example, is incredibly popular for those who want to do videos. You'll see a lot of Indians have their own recipe making channels. Then Fastly is used predominantly by newspapers all over the world because Fastly offers, you can easily update your content as well, and it's pretty fast. Shopify is for small businesses. Zen Commerce is another small business. And the left-hand side ones are usually if you want to do end-to-end on your own. These have huge number of variations. Some offer, like Salesforce, Azure, Amazon even offer specialized applications. If you want to do finance kind of a website, they offer all the different services for you. Okay. Any questions so far? Now this is a pretty big topic actually, but I'm just giving you a flavor because fundamentally the key point to remember is that the underlying concepts of security are similar in almost all of them. There's very little difference. We use the same technologies. I'll show you some of the technologies as well. But any question?
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you. Can we have a little bit of elaboration on P2P models here, like explaining them, to understand how a student can understand in his own way. Peer-to-peer model.
Sure.
Is one. Yeah.
So peer-to-peer model is peer is an individual to individual model. That's what it is basically. Peer means someone you work with. That's the English term. So peer-to-peer model is a new model where, and I'm not opening some of the sites in peer-to-peer because people post all kinds of stuff. But some of the most popular one is Airbnb. So for example, if I want to go to Kottayam, okay, Kerala, and I want to go to say 19th of next month to 23rd, right? 2 adults and my 2 kids. I'm searching. Right. So you can see many of these, for example, this Greenhaven, it could be somebody's home, for example, right? Now, this is an example of peer-to-peer. So if I have a home in a place where I think there could be some kind of interest from various people, and if I have some space and now I want to make some money off the site, I can rent a couple of rooms in my place, or I can rent an entire bungalow. If you're in Bangalore, for example, so a lot of you would have been to Chikmagalur and the Western Ghats, homestays, homestays in Coorg, in Chikmagalur, in Sringeri, that area. All of these are basically what you call as peer-to-peer services, peer-to-peer e-commerce. So here are so many listings. In many cases, they have given individual houses, but this is a pair model as well. Homestays is a classic example of peer-to-peer. Now, peer-to-peer is a simple method for someone to get on board. Another very popular one is Uber, right? Now, let's say you have a Maruti Ertiga, right? And it's not being used very well, and you want to see if you can make some money out of it. So you can hire a driver and you can sign up for Uber, and you can put your car for Uber. Now Uber takes some 30% or 40% on each drive in each trip commission, and you keep to the rest. And they will provide you with the things, the audience they'll provide you. They'll also provide you a platform where you can sell your services as well. All right. Now Uber Eats as well is another model. I don't know if it is there in India. I don't believe it is. For example, in Singapore, it's very popular. So if If you have a passion for cooking and you want to do some weekends special dishes, you can register on this and you can sell to people. Uber will basically do what is a pick up and drop, and they will complete the e-commerce transaction for you, and they'll take their commission. Right. So these are.
We also have in our country. We also have easy pickup and drop.
Okay. I don't believe it's there in Hyderabad. I've never used it, but so Uber Eats is another example. There are several of them. I think India has some, not many yet. It's still a developing market for P2P where India is concerned. Facebook is another big one. I don't know if I can show you, just a minute.
Sir, is Oyo also the similar concept, Oyo rooms that we had earlier?
So Oyo is a predominantly B2C model, because Oyo end user is 90%. Oyo clients are 99%. They are hotels. They are not homes. It does have some homestays, but it's not a P2P, because P2P is usually end user on one side who's trying to sell the services.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah. So this is a marketplace. So this is another P2P model. This is very popular. In fact, this is actually very popular as well. This is actually both C2C and P2P. Facebook is something like that. P2P is more. There is no particular form and shape for it. It's basically you trying to sell to another one using your network, right? So that's P2P. The advantage is when you're using some of these existing platforms, they take care of your entire banking, the transaction security. That's a huge help, because transaction security is very huge. I'm sure we would have seen several times. We sell something and the guy refuses to give money. That's a big challenge. So Uber Eats or Airbnb, they take that problem away. Okay. Now, I just want to show you a G2B model as well, government to business. E-auction in India is a huge example of this. All government tenders, the coal blocks, the telecom spectrum, all of them go through this. This is a very transparent model. It's a very secure model as well. So this is an example of G2B. Mostly national assets are sold in this fashion in many countries. Whichever countries have this functionality, they sell national government assets, something like on this model. Okay, any other questions? I'll move now. Now, what are the key threats? So, I'm sure many of you are familiar with all of these. Now, the threats are growing. Basically, one reason is why when I started the internet, I was on a 56 kilobytes per second internet. In reality, I would get about 8 kbps and I would be delighted from the Department of Telecom, as they call it. It wasn't BSNL then. Now you can essentially buy a 1 gigabit per second network to your home, and which means there's a tremendous amount of speed that you get to browse internet. It also means that someone who's got nefarious intentions has a tremendous amount of bandwidth to do something bad. So viruses, phishing, credit card fraud, malware, social engineering, the list basically grows. On the server side, on the e-commerce provider side, data theft is a big concern. It continues to wreak havoc. Then bots are basically automated programs. What they do is, like, if you ever been to Flipkart has this special sale of OnePlus TV or Redmi TV or MI TV, right? There are only 1,000 units available, and then whoever gets first will first come first serve, right? And some of these products have amazing capabilities. So what these bots do is they will automatically buy the product. And they do that instantly. By the time you enter credit card and everything, it will be a lot of time, but these bots do instantly. Now, CoWIN website, for example, is currently thought to be plagued by bots. It's very difficult to find vaccination slots. So bots are huge. They're wreaking havoc in that area. So government is taking some steps to minimize that. Ransomware is another big problem. Ransomware means someone will download some kind of program into your app, that app will, stealthily, silently, it will encrypt all your data, and then they will ask you some funds to unlock it. If you don't give the funds, it will essentially be wiped away. So that's ransomware. This is a huge problem these days. They're increasingly going corporate and trying less. They're not bothering end users, especially in Asia, there are very few. But in the West, it's a big problem. Software web weaknesses and backdoors is, your software has some weaknesses. I'll tell you a bit more down the slides today. Spoofing fake websites is, if you go to, I don't know if I recently raised a complaint with, for example, Google. So if I go to passport renewal, okay. So I'm going to click on passport services. This is a fake website basically. So this is a spoof. I think I raised complaint on this, so they changed the website and came across another one. So if someone is looking at this, they will think that this is a passport website, and they immediately start application and entering the name and everything. But this is not a genuine website. All they'll do is, nowhere it says it is a private website. It's very difficult to say, But then somewhere down this say it's not a government website, and there's no way you can prevent it. Digital India, Empower India. These are actually what is a fake websites. They try to, once you provide all the data, they will try to help you, or maybe they'll just keep the data, and you don't know how they are used. The other big ones are, for example, banking. ICICI banking customer, right? ICICI customer care, for example. I think Google addressed the problem. You see this number. You don't know if this is a real number, right? This is some website that tries to provide you with a real number. This could be some guy sitting at home trying to fake you into giving your details, right? So whenever you're doing customer care numbers, always go to the banking websites to look at it. Never use Google. People will ask you a lot of personal information, because by itself banking needs personal information. So if you can go here, I don't see the number that's here. So for example, it says 730-666-7777. Do you see the number here? I don't. Right? So
No.
There are some numbers, right? But that 730 is not there. So this is another example of fake and spoofing websites. They tend to grab information and they could end up in a scam, right? Now, site weaknesses is not something we can do. It's very difficult for us to know. But basically, some of the websites will add some extra lines to your to this line data here, to this address bar. We wouldn't even know it. Most people wouldn't know it. Those will actually seek additional information from the website, some confidential information. Denial of service is basically you are not able to access the website because of fake traffic. Again, this is mostly a server-side problem. We don't need to do much about it. Okay. Now, I want to share one particular aspect which is important for you here, which is called "Have I Been Pawned?" Okay. Now, there have been so many breaches in the world. Facebook itself lost 500 million accounts, out of which 6 million are from India. Right. So, how do you know if your account has been compromised or exposed in some way? You can go to the website, and this only shares you those sites which have published, where the data has been available of who's compromised. Okay, so if I enter my email ID or mobile number, you can see my account has been compromised in all these websites. So latest is Domino's Pizza in April 2021, just 2 months ago. And what has been compromised? Email addresses, names, phone numbers, physical addresses, purchases. I don't know if credit card information is there, because I thought this listed credit card last month, and now it's changed. Maybe that information is no longer available, right? Actually, I think the website removed credit cards. Okay, because nowhere you see credit card, but because I know in Adobe, I received an email from Adobe saying that my credit card had been compromised. So you should keep checking this regularly in case there's some e-commerce provider you visit often and there's a compromise. At least at a minimum, you can change your password, or you can enable two-factor authentication. Okay. Now the other one is to remember is this. So if you go to Google, Google has a list of autofill passwords. In this, you can go to settings and then passwords. And then you can see there's a small thing here that says check passwords, and it kind of shows you how many passwords are compromised. This is only showing if you store passwords in the Google Password Manager, right? And you can see I've had a pretty big exposure, 64 compromised and 185 weak passwords. Now I think I've changed almost all of them. So I don't think I've changed, for example, in APS RTC, where I used to book RTC tickets. I don't use them at all. So I don't remember changing it, but by and large I've changed. So this is another way to know how much have your personal information compromised. Okay, so it's kind of indicative about security. Means you always have to be alert. There is never a dull moment for you to be, taking it easy. So you have to be aware of this. And many banks have what is called as fraud mechanisms. If you raise a fraud alert in 24 hours, you usually are protected from the fraud. You have to look at your credit card or debit card provider to understand those specific terms and conditions. But it's always important to know if you have been compromised. Okay. Now, the biggest worry for consumers is data theft, as I've shown you just now. For e-commerce providers, it's a reputational damage. Now, if you know, for example, if your security has been compromised on a particular website, do you want to visit it again? I don't, right? And often companies can go bust or they can incur significant losses because of this particular thing. Now, key thing with security, as I've just told you, is it's predominantly preventive. There's nothing you can do after your data has been exposed, after a site has lost data, right after a site has been compromised. So the most effort we can take, or even organizations take, is in preventive mechanisms. I'll show you some examples of some of the popular tools that are used to make this happen. And detective controls are those which you do on a monthly basis or on a periodic basis, which help you to understand what are your exposures, basically weaknesses. Now, where do you add security? The communication channel, internet. This is your Airtel cable from your home to your Airtel. From if you're using Hathway, if you're using Jio, this is basically the cable that's outside on the road. Basically, this is unprotected, right? It's only a conduit. You can't add a device in the middle of it. You can only add it at an endpoint or at a service provider. So security is usually done at both the points, and we'll take a quick look at how these things are enabled. Now remember that security is fundamentally invisible, right? You don't see it. Now that's good thing as well, and that's not a good thing as well, because if you're going to a new website, you may not know if there is security or not, right? We assume security is there. So I'll show you some tips about how to check and kind of get some minimum assurance that there is security available. Okay. Now, any questions on what we've discussed so far in this section? If I'm going too fast as well, please do tell me.
No, it's correct, sir.
Okay, cool. Any questions from anyone? Okay, cool. Now, before we get into any specifics about the technologies for security, this is an extremely important preventive step: policies and procedures, right? Policy is basically a statement of intent to guide and direct people. Like, I have a policy for, say, acceptable use policy. The policy says, guys, you cannot use your office internet to do personal shopping, to watch videos, for personal email. So that is what is called an acceptable use policy. It's basically a statement that says these are the things that you can do, and these are the things that are allowed, right? This is mostly guiding, and if you are at home, you don't need this. But if you're in a university or if you're in an office, this helps, because at home it's just you, but in an office or in your university with, say, 3,000 students, if 3,000 students do all what they want to do, this poses significant security risk to the university network. Okay, so almost all organizations of any kind of organization, they have these kind of policies. Procedures is now I've told you how not what you can do and what we cannot do. Now the procedures tells you how to implement policy. For example, acceptable use policy says I'm going to implement some kind of web proxy that blocks access to YouTube, that blocks access to Google Meet, for example, that blocks access to Amazon or e-commerce sites, right? So that's the procedure. Some of these procedures also include detailed technical guides. None of them here would have that. There are other policies beyond this, for example, which will have those detailed technical guides and guidelines. Fundamentally, this anything to do with policy and procedure is basically about risk assessment, right? If you're buying a new house or if you're buying a new gadget, you want to look at how tough the gadget is, how easy to use the gadget is it usable, does it connect to your home Wi-Fi, the things you ask. So that's basically a risk assessment, right? So similarly, when organizations introduce a new device, new technology, or they basically do a risk assessment. What risk does this device provide? Then you create a similar policy, then you implement the policy, you launch it, that is you communicate to all the users, and you periodically review it. This is a very important part. In most organizations, they are essentially asked to sign a document saying that you have reviewed all of these, and then you understand this, and there's periodic checks. One of my past roles is to check this policy compliance, as we call it, on an annual basis. So we would do it every quarter. We will do a periodic check, and then annually we would complete the review or audit, and then issue a certificate saying the policies have been complied to satisfaction. The second part is actually the client-side security. This is basically the end-user security. This is about you, basically. This is about me, sitting at home, sitting at your it's about each individual devices. Now, there's not much to do from a security point of view, but essentially, if you're not having an antivirus or a security suite, it's not generally safe for you to browse the internet, because these things fundamentally prevent the vast amount of virus threats. So, for example, I use this particular one called Bitdefender. It's an entire end-to-end security protection suite. You can see it's got vulnerability scans, got a VPN. It also protects me from digital transactions online. If it thinks, for example, some of the websites don't have sufficient protection, it will not allow me to complete the transaction, right? And on top of that, there's a whole lot of capabilities in there. Antivirus, there is a vulnerability protection. There's also a personal firewall for my own machine. And then there's a ransomware protection. So it's very unlikely that somebody can download an app into my laptop and ask me to pay money, because there's some protection in it. Okay, so it's better to have these things, and then there are free ones, there are paid ones, but it's very important if you are engaging in e-commerce transactions. If you're essentially browsing the internet, you need something like this. And then there's a whole lot of responsible behaviors. For example, always use antivirus, use responsible passwords. Use strong passwords. Don't use 1 2 3 4 5 6 or use password as password, and keep changing passwords frequently. Visit secure sites. I'll show you a bit about this. And don't share personal info on every site unless you know there's a genuine need for it, right? Then use your system security updates, like for example, like this one. This is there in almost all Windows applications, all operating systems. In fact, you can see that it's basically checking for software updates, and it'll ask you to keep yourself updated. Because what it does is basically provides you about known threats. Right? That's the thing fundamentally. Okay. Then, as much as possible, if you're especially on banking, if you have multiple bank accounts, don't use the same password. If you compromise one, you compromise everything. Then use two-factor authentication, which is nothing but password plus an OTP. Right? And if you're downloading, make sure it's a secure site. And if possible, use a password manager like what I showed you in Chrome. So this is just about responsible behaviors. And this will only minimize the chances of a security issue for you. It won't prevent it. But if you're not using this, maybe you have a 50–60% chance of exposure. But if you're using this, maybe you have a 5% chance of exposure. So it just reduces the risk. Now the second part is actually a communication channel. This is basically the internet part. Now, cryptography is what we call as an extremely important component. It's a foundation for the modern internet. Basically, if you say hello to somebody and you apply, let's say I replace O with A and L with K, like you can have replacement for each word. That's called encryption, uh, right? And then it gives you a completely ununderstandable, illegitimate text. And again, someone can apply the same encryption key to understand your message. That is what is called as encryption. Now, almost all your chat, like even Google Meet, uses this encryption. Okay. Now, they don't use the same key for both encryption and decryption, which is called a symmetric key, but they use two different keys. I'll tell you about that in a minute. Now, this is what is called secure internet. I'll show you this example. Encryption is used for secure internet in SSL or HTTPS. They also used for email security, digital signatures. I'm sure you've heard about all of that. And then additionally, banks, all those websites which collect customer data, they encrypt their databases using the same model. And the right-hand side picture is basically all the different algorithms that's there. You don't need to worry yourself. There are thousands of them. Okay, this is more to just give you a view of how many different kinds of encryptions are there. Okay. Now this is an extremely important chart, not for just for your education, but also for your for your knowledge of how to browse internet safely. So there are basically two keys, a public key and a private key. This is called PKI encryption model, public key infrastructure model. They're basically a public key. Public key, as the word says, it's public. It means anybody can get this key. Okay? And then there's a private key. So public key is basically used to encrypt any message that you want to send. Like, for example, if I'm sending a message to Amazon, I'm going to download the public key of my recipient and I'm going to encrypt the message. And then Amazon is going to use their private key to decrypt the message. So private key is only held by Amazon or you, for example, right? Any individual, they can decrypt using private key. Private key is also used to digitally sign. This is more digital signatures. And then you can use public key to verify that signature. Okay? So basically, private key is meant to verify the identity. This is nothing but when you sign on a piece of paper, it's basically confirming that Hi Hari Krishna has signed this message, right? It's the same way. Private key is used to verify the identity, and public key is used to verify that the person has correctly identified himself. Okay? Now, this is foundation or this is a core block for all e-commerce. If you don't see this on an e-commerce website, don't think for another second. Don't even transact there. Okay? You might heard of I'm sure you have heard of email, secure email like Gmail, Outlook, Yahoo. They're all secure emails. VPN is another. I'm sure you've seen it. Credit card security. This particular aspect drives your entire e-commerce transaction. Entire internet security is fundamentally based on this model. Okay. Now let me show you a bit about the security of it. Now let's say I'm going to Amazon.in. Okay. Right. Now you can see a padlock here on the top left-hand side. Now that padlock says this is a secure website. Okay. You can click on it, and you can see there's a valid certificate. I can check the certificate itself. I'm sure it's too small to read, but you can try this in your own laptops or computers afterwards. But basically here it says this is the certificate issued by a company called DigiCert, Global Certifying Authority. And this basically does two things. It provides the identity and it ensures the identity. Like it provides your identity to a remote computer, in this case it's Amazon, and it ensures the identity of Amazon. So it basically verifies the identity of Amazon. Okay. Now there's a lot more detail here. This is the algorithm. Signature algorithm is SHA-256 RSA. Don't worry about what it is. It's just a name. RSA series of algorithms are extremely popular and one of the strongest algorithms in the business. Basically, there's so many companies which specialize in developing security algorithms. And then there is this security key. Okay. So let me copy that key for you.
Sir, is that all e-commerce platforms when we are entering, like, a student is, buying something. every e-commerce platform would be having this particular lock symbol, right? The security.
They must have. If they don't have, you shouldn't be buying it.
We should, yes, we should not enter such sites, right?
Exactly. So this certificate is a purchase. It's basically purchased by the service provider. There's different kinds of certificates, and there's different costs involved. And what happens is certificates are valid to a particular date. So generally, a week before the certificate expires, the website has to deliver. They have to renew the website and reinstall a fresh certificate. Right? It's just not like if you buy the certificate, it automatically renew. It's not like that. You have to delete the old certificate and reinstall the fresh certificate on the web server. Now, why this renewal? Because this company that's certifying the website, they will make some checks to see if the business is genuine, or if there's any complaints against the business, or if there are any legal issues against the business. Sometimes they will not renew this. If, for example, pirated sites, for example, many of them lost their SSL certificates because they are selling in pirated software. They lose the certificate. So this the company has to check. So if you're looking at any websites which don't have this, for example, University of University of Washington, we've seen this yesterday. I lost the website. I think we seen a website yesterday where they didn't have the certificate, right? I think this is the one. You see, yesterday, I don't know if you remember Dr. Anupama, they did not have the certificate, right? This is the same site. And today they have the certificate.
Correct. Yes, you are telling us correct.
Yeah. So something happened to them.
Maybe that is they would have renewed it, or maybe they right. That is one thing that you were discussing yesterday.
Exactly. They must have renewed it, or they must not have installed it fault. When we looked yesterday, they did not have a certificate, but maybe they heard us, and now they have a certificate, which means you can exchange some data. There are other websites as well. For example, the UNFAO. I'll show you this. So this is another website, which is, you can see here, it says not secure. Right? This is more of an information website. It's very unlikely that you'll ever exchange any information with them. This is not an e-commerce site, by the way, but I'm just sharing you an example. So whenever you're transacting online, it could be any website. It could be IRCTC. It could be your Indigo airline, for example. Always make sure that there is a security here. It says it's secure, right? It's very important to do that. Otherwise, you should never exchange any digital transaction, any personal information on such sites. Okay. So that is about SSL. SSL is the foundation for VPN. I don't know if your university has a VPN, but VPN is a way of connecting between secure networks. It's usually it's predominantly used in corporates as well as branches. SBI, for example, branch connects to the main server using a VPN, which means you're using the internet to exchange data, but you're giving a personalized security. It's not an open security. It's a personalized security. So in this case, the SBI's public key is not even available publicly, right? That's a VPN. It's a very specialized model. And then there's a digital signature and email. Okay, so this is something that is mostly done for communication security. This is channel security. Okay, any questions on this? Remember, guys, if you are on a public internet, like for example, airport internet, railway station internet, Starbucks, Coffee Day, any public internet, always make sure that you check for the secure HTTP. Even Facebook has a secure HTTP. But if you are using public internet and there is no secure connection like this, it means if I'm able to listen to your Wi-Fi data, which is possible, that's not in scope for the discussion today, how that is. but it is quite possible to capture data that's exchanged on an open network. It means you will be compromised. Your login ID, your password, if you exchange credit card information, all of that is essentially compromised on an insecure internet. Okay, that's very important. Some of the common places are airport. Almost all airports in India these days have free Wi-Fi, so we have to be very careful about using internet there. If you have a VPN, use VPN. If not, browse only secure websites. Similarly, railways as well is another open internet. Coffee Day and Starbucks are also providing free internet. I know a lot of restaurants do as well, but remember, secure yourself. Browse only secure websites in such cases. Okay. And let me go to the last part. The business side is basically, when I say business side, I'm talking of Indigo, right? I'm talking of Amazon. Like I'm going to, I'm buying something, and I just bought this memory card yesterday, right? I'm going to buy that based on a certain level of trust. And the security, as I told you, is invisible. Like you can't see it, and you assume it's there, right? So, what are the things that Amazon would have done in the back end? What are the things that Indigo would have done on the back end to give us that security? So that is what this is about. Yeah. When we talk of security, we talk of these core components. There's network security, which is nothing but the security from the internet. From once the internet connection ends in the Amazon website, or what are the security aspects. Then there's something called internet security, which is nothing but we've seen that primarily encryption. Then there's an endpoint security, which is what you've discussed, like your laptop, your mobile device. This is mostly on the end user side. Wireless security is same as internet security. There's nothing additional to talk about. Cloud security is a small aspects of it which we will not cover. It's too technical, but fundamentally it's a way of authenticating yourself on the website. For example, I'll show you. I don't know if you know SlideShare. SlideShare is a way for sharing presentations and materials. It's a fantastic resource. Several of my materials have come through this. Some of the material I use today has come from this. A lot of professors, a lot of people would share the materials on this. This is a rich site. Now,
Usually, we teachers also use this kind of slideshows and the stream where we can also upload our PPTs.
oh, fantastic. Right. So here you use login with LinkedIn, login with Facebook. This is what is called as OAuth. OAuth is a particular standard, but this is what we call cloud security. So instead of using your own data, they'll actually use Gmail, Google, Amazon accounts, right? In this case, it's asking for LinkedIn, but that is basically what is cloud security. So you can use any of the existing trusted security providers like Google, Outlook, Microsoft, LinkedIn, Facebook, Amazon. You can use that to slide. So that is what is called as cloud security. There are a lot more facilities just apart from Google as well, but we will not go there today. I'm sure all of you heard the concept of firewall. Okay, this comes from an old mythical tale of firewall protecting from dragons. Basically, it's an old fantasy story. That's where the term originates. A basic principle is it protects you from illegitimate traffic. Right? It's a rule-based system. Right? It's rule-based. It says those with an identity card can swipe in and come to the university, right, or into a lab, or into the office. Right? Those without the swipe-in cards, or those with incorrect swipe-in, right? Like for example, an employee of Infosys accidentally tries to go into TCS, right? And that is an illegitimate traffic. So his swipe card will not work on Infosys security system. So those are all the illegitimate traffic. So firewall protects the organization, the website, from such illegitimate traffic. Yeah. This is basically a rule based, just like I said, an example of Infosys. If the employee ID in the tag is in my database, it will allow the person. If not, it will not allow the person. Right? Now, this is an example of how how a firewall looks. The different companies, these are the big ones. And an organization usually has, a large organization usually have anywhere from 30 to hundreds of firewalls. in my laptop, there's only one firewall, and that's more than enough for me. There's another firewall from at Airtel, which protects me to some extent. Okay. Now these are physical devices. The last, you can see a screen button, small port called console. One of the things with firewall is somebody has to physically connect to this port to access the device. And while it protects you from the internet, nobody can log on to this device via the internet, even within the internal internet network of the company or external network. So this is very secure, and this is the first line of defense for an organization or for e-commerce site. The second part is basically intrusion detection and prevention system. Again, this is entirely invisible. This is again a physical device. Intrusion detection system is basically like your watchman at the gate. Okay, he will basically say, "Sir, there's somebody at the door." It's not like watchman. It's more like your CCTV, closed circuit CCTV. It basically says there is somebody at the door or somebody inside the premises who shouldn't be there. And all it does is it'll expect the person who's monitoring the CCTV to take action. Okay, but itself cannot take action. Whereas an IPS, intrusion prevention system, is like your security guard. If they see someone within the premises who's not supposed to be there, they will run with a stick, right? That's the IPS. Okay. Now these are two softwares. You just need to know what they are. I've seen them at work, but it's pretty hard to see them in action. They basically, I'll show you how we see alerts from there as well. And then there's all these web servers. Amazon itself is a web server. Web server is when you go to a page, this is where the first page is. Web servers run the e-commerce websites. And there's so many of them. There's something called open source, which are free. And then there's something called Microsoft IaaS. Now, yesterday when I was looking at, for example, IRCTC, right? You know this website. Now, when I clicked on IRCTC, okay, they fixed it. So yesterday it was showing NGINX. So it was landing me on this page. I know IRCTC uses NGINX web server, right? The only thing to remember is all these websites come with some inherent security issues. So we need to patch them. That concept is called hardening. We just need to understand that. Like just I showed you my security update system where all their security updates. One of them is basically ensuring the latest security patches are installed. So that's called hardening. And these are some of the examples of recent incidents. Some of them are pretty big, like Air India got hacked in just exactly a month ago, I think, May 22, 4.5 million passenger data is logged. It's not Air India which was logged, but it's SITA, which is an international database for passenger travel. Because you travel between two countries, there's a data exchange. If you book a ticket, both host country and the destination country has to know you're coming. So that's SITA database. The SITA database has been hacked. It's just not Air India. A lot of international airlines also got hacked. Then Domino's is another big hack. Facebook is another. I mean, Facebook is, it seems pretty common. I think 60 lakh Indian users have been exposed. I don't know if Facebook has alerted the users, but fundamentally Facebook has said it has not been hacked. So they disowned that hack. But a lot of public news channels and security websites have confirmed that Facebook is hacked. Okay. And many of these hacks happen because of some kind of weakness in the system. Okay. Now, let me complete this section, then I think we'll come to an end. So you've seen all the various components of security. Now, how are they managed? Now, basically what is called as event monitoring dashboard. Now, if you go to PMO India, which I'll show you here, this is called performance monitoring dashboard. Now, this is actually an initiative of the recent government. So there's a whole lot of information here, like which show you aspects, for example, which unelectrified villages 0. Okay. So there's a lot of information that is available here, where you can actually monitor how the various aspects are. Right. This is a high-level view. Now, security event monitoring tools are something like this. So this is an example of a security monitoring tool. Now, there will be people sitting in there. I'll show you how that looks as well. and they'll keep monitoring the events, and there'll be somebody who's going to go and fix these issues. Okay. Now there's a whole lot of different areas. So this is much more common. This is something I've seen, and we regularly audit this. How many systems have the latest updates installed? How many systems have antivirus software installed? How many systems by operating system? How many times the system has been rebooted? And if you go to an organization, it's mandatory that you get your laptop rebooted at least once in 5 days, I think. Different organizations have different methods. Because the minute you reboot the system, then the latest antivirus software, latest patches all automatically get downloaded, right? Then it also says how many unmonitored devices, 83, right? That's a big number, right? So the 69 does not include this 83. It's a big number. So somebody has to go and install the respective software on that. And then this is the actual event for viruses. This is how this shows. For example, this dashboard shows parts of North America are having some kind of malware attack. Right? This is a southern US and Alaska region. I think this is something to do with the Colonial Pipeline hack, for example, where a major petroleum company was put in ransomware. So this shows that. Okay. So this is how you essentially monitor security events. If there is an event, you respond to it. It's a reactive model. But the network security aspects like firewall, IDS, they are all the preventive models. Now, how does somebody monitor? This is an example. This is a Dell Security Monitoring Operations Center. I think this is based in Singapore, to my knowledge. So this is the APAC Monitoring Center. You can see the Google map. It shows the APAC, right? So this is how they see. This is a list of incidents that's happening. And these guys keep monitoring it. There are 3 levels of support. The lowest level of support is somebody who goes to various machines to fix it. The second level of support are, if there is an incident, if there are 50 computers which have been infected by a virus, there's somebody on the ground who will check and fix the 50 computers. The second level of guys here will sit and say, how did the virus even come into our organization in the first place? What is the point of entry? So they will investigate that. Okay. Now, I was involved in a similar setup in Genpact where I worked, and that was a 50-seater. This seems to be like a 30-seater. You can see 5. This is mostly a 15-20-seater. You can see 5 in the middle, 5 in the first, another 5 here, so 15, 20-seater. The one in Genpact where I worked had a 50-seater. Now, banks, infrastructure companies, they have a much larger console like this. It's a pretty ISRO, NASA kind of system. It's a pretty intensive operation, but this is an example for banks, and this is an example of companies which have outsourced, small companies or companies which have outsourced their security. They usually have something like this. There's 2 managers who will be sitting and monitoring, and they'll only act on those which have been pending, say, for 3 hours. If a critical incident is open for 3 hours, they'll check with these outsourced guys, why is this open for 3 hours? Okay. And last slide for the day is, a lot of artificial intelligence is used in security these days. Like, for example, in Amazon, if someone, for example, somebody used my credit card in a foreign country once, a HDFC Bank credit card, right? Now, immediately HDFC called me up and said, sir, somebody is using your credit card in, say, Indonesia. Are you making any transaction? I said, no, I'm not. So they immediately blocked the transaction, right? Because in many countries, the credit cards don't have OTP concept. In Western Europe, in US, you don't have OTP, for example, right? So they use AI. AI basically says Hari is transacting predominantly from India, mainly from Bangalore and Hyderabad. He predominantly buys electronics and these kind of services. His delivery addresses are these 3 addresses, right? Now, if something changes, if my request is not coming from India, if the request is not, delivery address is not any of these existing locations, right? If it is not, say, within India working hours or within India time zone, they automatically alert and block the transaction. So that's an example of using application of AI. Okay, and this is the hottest trend. This is a very complex topic, but just be aware that this is the latest happening in this area. Okay, so that's it for this presentation. It's more informative just to educate you on what's happening. Any questions? Any feedback?
Thank you, sir. Students, any questions at this point of time? You can unmute yourself and ask the question.
We have students as well as the teachers who is taking the subject. They can also ask the questions.
Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. You are audible, sir.
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
So probably I would like to check if our students have any questions. Post that, I think I'll pose my question. Let us. I can hold on to my questions, not a problem.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. No problem.
Okay.
Students, let them ask
Okay.
if there is any questions.
Sure.
Or if the students are really feeling shy to ask the questions on the platform, they can put it in the chat box. No problem.
Okay. Probably then I'll go ahead with my question. Good afternoon, Harisa. This is Gokul here. I handle e-business for this semester for the two sections, that is D and E section of second year BCom. I've been participating in the seminar from the guest lecture from yesterday as well. So wonderful session, sir. I think as a subject teacher, I think we need to, and the syllabus also expects us to get into the academic perspective of things. And I think you have really brought in the practical aspects. Having worked in companies like GE and others, I think you've really gotten a very practical insight of things. Having said that, thank you so much. I think on behalf of my students, specifically to whom I handle the class, I think all of them will echo my opinion about it. So my question is very generic. I mean, it might sound a bit immaturish also. So the question is, on the one side, we talk about e-commerce models, and we also want our students, because today the need of the hour is to go online. So, and some of us, some of our students, if they want to start a career in e-commerce, we show them the way. We say that this is how you can start, and we kind of give them a pathway as to how we need to go ahead. That is on the one side, we show them the pathway, and on the other side we have something like an e-security, where the students also need to be aware of what are the things they need to look out for. For example, you told about the certificates and all those, how secure the websites needs to be and all that. So I'm just looking at, on the one side you have the aspirations of the students, and on the other hand you have the internet security. So as a person from the industry, what were the three things that you would tell the students? One thing, not to drop their dream because of the internet security, or not to get boggled down by these things. If you were sitting at the helm of things and telling people as to what is it, how do they uh, you know uh, cut through this kind of balance between these two things, I think that will be great, sir. Probably that is something which an academician cannot answer. That has to come from the industry. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Gokul sir, firstly for your wonderful feedback. I'm happy to be here. It's always a pleasure to be speaking to students on topics. They have some of the freshest minds, and they often bring fresh perspective to a lot of things. Right now, that said, now fundamentally, I know you're in college. You'll be sitting in the classroom and learning. But first thing to remember is that working is a form of learning. Okay, the very few jobs where you actually learn what you did in college, right? Is fundamentally you are learning how to apply what you learned in college at work. So whether you talk of internet security or you talk of e-commerce, these are all things that are perpetually in development. So there's always a learning curve. Even for me, when I'm doing my own startup, uh, I did a startup in insurance domain, which I have absolutely no knowledge of, except for purchasing insurance. I have no knowledge of it, right? When I joined Genpact, it was my first corporate organization. And then I joined a Fortune 500 company, right? So first thing to remember is, as a anyone who's looking to career, learning is a perpetual thing in at work, right? So you always have to keep an open mind to learn whatever comes your way, and there's nothing to be worried about, or you always continue to learn. And sometimes you after a couple of years you'll end up finding what you like most. The first few years are always a challenge. You don't know what is the best thing, but you essentially end up after a couple of years identifying what you love. Now, if you ask me, I love project management. I love business partnering. Those are the two key areas I'm looking to. I love entrepreneurship. I'm not a big fan of risk management now. I've done many years, right? So something that you need to keep in mind, uh, always be in a learning mode. The second point is security is a part of your life, right? Whether you live in society or whether you browse on the internet, security is a part of life. This is something that you need to be aware of yourself. It's like the law of the land. You can't say ignorance of law is an excuse, right? That's just not possible. The same way, just be aware of what's happening, and you don't need to stay extra effort. Now, as you browse more websites, just pay a little more attention to what's happening. Like, for example, UPI has come recently, right? United Payments Interface. It's not there 5 years ago. But now I don't think there will be any one of you who's not aware of how to use UPI, right? So things develop. So just be aware of what's happening. And the third point is if you are more interested in specific domains to build a career in this, you are lucky. E-commerce is an incredibly vast topic. I can't tell you how many professions are there. Usually 1,000 professions involved in e-commerce model. Okay, so it's an absolutely fantastic career to be in. It's a future-proof career. I call e-commerce one of the evergreen fields. Both security and e-commerce, finance, supply chain, right? These are all what I call evergreen fields, which means any point in time, irrespective of whether the economy is going down or up. Right now, if you take US, the economy is in a really bad shape the last couple of quarters. But you still see Google had 50,000 people, Amazon had 80,000 people, right? So all of that is something you can look into. So just keep yourself open, explore more. I think that's the way forward to go in this area. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So we have a question from Ms. Shalini. Does this come under IT Act or cyber law, or is there any separate law to e-commerce?
Okay. So e-commerce, okay, this is not a strong suit for me, but I have basic knowledge. So India has an Information Technology Act, which is pretty encompassing. It covers a vast number of areas, including cybercrime and certain aspects of e-commerce. Okay, and so IT Act protects you against untoward incidents. So if there's a fraud that's happened to you, it would come under the purview of IT Act. So you can complain to the cybercrime police station. I think Bangalore has several. Almost all cities have one or two stations called cybercrime police stations. You can basically complain to them. There are also parts of e-commerce where the transaction part actually comes under several laws, right? There's a law of contracts, there's a law of sales, right? There's a Companies Act. So e-commerce covers vast number of acts. The Competition and Monopoly, right? There's a Digital Goods and Purchases Act, there's a GST Act. E-commerce as a business, the transaction itself is just like any other commerce. So all laws that apply to your retail market, like supermarkets, like physical shops, also apply to e-commerce. Okay, and additional protection is the IT Act, which provides you that action will be taken against those who perpetuate in cyber fraud, and wherever possible, most of the time the police do investigate, and whether you recover your funds or not is a secondary matter. But definitely it comes under IT Act, and there are some protections involved. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions, students? Yes, we have a question, sir.
There is one more question from Anantraj. You can read that.
Yes. Sir, there's a question from Mr. Anand. Sir, you have awaited us having security for our privacy so that it's safe. In spite of all security, there might be still have a thought in us how well we are secured and safe, or how best or better where the data is protected.
Thanks, Anand, for that question. This is a very broad question, actually. So we have to look at these two endpoints in security, right? That's a fundamental thing. So if we look at the communication channel security, let me just go back here for a minute. So this is where, so the first point is yourself, right? You need to be clear of which site you are transacting, how much data you're exposing. For example, is there a lock-in, what is your lock-in time in your mobile phone, for example? Many of us don't have lock-in time. For example, if you forget the phone anywhere, anyone can just swipe it and the phone is unlocked. So have you taken steps to prevent that from not happening? For example, my phone, I have mostly a corporate practice, it's 30 seconds. In 30 seconds, it locks off. And me and my wife usually end up in a big argument about how fussy I am about security. Things like that on your side, have you done it? So that's the first part. So you can take a lot of steps to prevent that, right? Making sure you have good passwords, making sure there's a lock-in protection, making sure you only transact on secure sites, making sure that if you're using public, like cyber cafes, you log in, log out, right? Those steps. So this is the first part of the protection. And this is the only part which is usually in your control. On the other service provider side, there's not very much we can keep in control of. E-commerce, if you want to transact, you have to provide certain information, and there's very little choice. And there are laws governing this. Unfortunately, India does not have strong laws on data protection. The best known in the world is actually called GDPR from Europe, the Global Data Protection Regulations. They are incredibly strict. For example, if there is a data breach in Europe, the law says they have to declare, I think within X number of days, I don't remember the days, it has to be publicly disclosed by the corporation to regulatory authorities and to the public. Then every individual has to be informed if his or her account has been compromised. And then if there is a loss after the compromise, for example, my credit card information has been lost, somebody has misused it, then the organization that has lost the data would be responsible to repay that individual. So Europe has some of the strongest laws. India, we still don't have, US does not have any protection at all. It's only what banks offer. India is in the same boat. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Okay, any other last questions? Cool, then I hope you found the session useful and informative. Please do share your
So we
feedback.
have one
Okay.
question from Mr. Pramod. So nowadays we have NFC-based debit and credit cards which do not require PIN while transacting. Is it really secure in this world where hacking is easily done?
Okay, this is a very interesting question, Pramod. In India, we have not seen much fraud on NFC-based credit cards yet. Within NFC as well, there are two types. One is called as, let me just check my credit card. I don't forget the name. It's basically a wave. You know, it's called a wave credit cards, or basically there's a wireless kind of symbol next to it. So there are some credit cards which actually do that. There's a small RFID which provide that protection. NFC by and large is secure, but again, the general recommendation is to have wallets that block NFC signals, right? If somebody is standing behind you in the line, they can actually have an NFC card reader and complete the transaction. If you go to YouTube, you will see several videos of real life incidents like that. I'm not very familiar of any such incidents in India, but if it happened in the US, it's just a matter of time before it happens in India. So they are not that secure, but they are really convenient, especially for elders who can't remember their pins, right? So the general protection is always have the wallets. If you check in Amazon, the wallets that protect you against these kind of NFC skimming, they call it. So have those kind of wallets. NFC is just more of convenience. Security wise, they're not really that secure. Nothing beats PIN. Within PIN, there's something called as chip and PIN. Chip is actually a very unique code that credit cards have. When you put that machine, you have to put it in the machine for the chip and PIN to work, right? Many cards in India are chip and PIN, but NFC, I wouldn't call it that secure. It's a known issue, but yeah, it's just a matter of time before it continues to be exploited.
Thank you, sir. I guess we are done with all the questions also. And as it was a very informative and elaborative session, I guess all of us here have been able to understand it clearly with no doubts further.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you once again, sir. I guess like this session today has really helped all our students with the key pointers to e-business, and they also got to know a lot about the types of e-businesses, the security aspects in detail, and the recent developments and trends, throwing some light on the artificial intelligence in e-business. I think it was pretty much informative, sir, because they have been studying this as a theory, but here they have had an exposure to it in terms of practicality with the help of this session. Thank you so much once again, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Vandana. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. I request Dr. Anupama to present her views on the session today.
Yes, thank you so much, and thank you, Hari, for having given such a wonderful session. It was enlightening and an excellent presentation on e-commerce topic, and definitely we had a deviation from yesterday's topic. And with a very short span of time, you have really made it, and you have presented it to the students. Once again, I tell you, as a teachers, I would definitely agree with Gokul sir and Vandana ma'am when they were talking about as a teacher, we would be having the concept, or having the responsibility of covering the concepts which are there provided in the syllabus of that particular university. And especially whether it is a fourth semester or a sixth semester. And even the students also go in the same way, reading and learning about that. But no, I'm sure that the students with this kind of corporate academia connect will always have a great practical exposure. Of course, to all of us, as a teachers, we also should be knowing that how really these e-commerce subject, or maybe any subject for that matter, practically implemented in reality. Once we see that reality, and yesterday also I got a lot of messages from my students saying that the concepts were really very easy to understand. When we saw sir presenting it in a different way, we really got mesmerized. This is how really the practical things are happening outside. So I think somewhere, we are making the students to aware of what practically how it happens in the outside world, and at the same time we are making them to understand and connect them with the clarity and giving the clarification to the concept. I really thank, I don't know how to thank Hari. You have really, I just made asked you for one session, and you made it really for the 2 days session, giving that one day, one more day, and sparing us, sparing the time with us, and keeping all your busy schedule that way. And we at SSMR, we really appreciate from the departments, both BBA as well as BCom, having this particular subject area covered very excellently and clarified very beautifully. Thank you so much. And we have been fortunate to have of such renowned identity from the academic, corporate, and students who have joined together today. So we, all three are here. I'm very thankful to the entire set of participants, from resource person Hari, and our beloved principal, Dr. Sanil Kumar sir, HODs, Dr. Nagraj sir, who is a pillar of support, and Professor Jagdish sir, who helped me in conducting this program, and coordinator Shalini ma'am. Thank you so much. And class teachers, they are really wonderfully, connected the students, and subject teachers as well, whom, we collected the syllabus from them, and this is how we all united for the purpose of Corporate Academia Connect today. I'm sure that our college will continue to get such significant program in Corporate Academia Connect on different subjects from the diverse group of corporate in future as well. So I would like to thank each one of you, and especially a big thanks to Hari for joining us today. Thank you so much, Hari, and thanks all the participants for their wonderful presence today. Thank you so much. And I think, we have a formal vote of thanks also. So over to you, Vandana ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. Yes, it is time now to thank the people formally who have made this day a memorable and successful one. Yes, now I call upon Purushottam, student from BCom, to render the vote of thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone. Respected Dr. Anil Kumar sir, Honorable Resource Person, Mr. Hari Banda sir, Todi Dr. Nagraj sir, Dr. Shalini ma'am, Dr. Anupama ma'am, class teachers, subject teachers, faculty members, and students. It is an honor for me to propose the vote of thanks for this special event. I, on behalf of the Department of Business Administration in association with Department of Commerce, SSMAVI College would like to thank all delegates for their presence and contribution to make this webinar a productive one. I extend my sincere thanks to our Honorable Resource Person, Mr. Hari K. Patibanda sir, who devoted his time to grace the event. Thank you, sir, for inspiring and educating us with your words. And special thanks to our principal, Dr. Anil Kumar sir, for providing the support to make the webinar successful. I extend my gratitude to Dr. Nagraj sir, our HOD, and Dr. Shalini ma'am for organizing this webinar in a seamless manner. I must not forget to thank the organizing team, volunteers, for their efforts in making this webinar a successful one. Again, thank you one and all for your time and efforts. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Purushot. I'm really sorry to pronounce your name wrongly. Thank you once again for being a part of this event.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank
Yes.
you. Thank you, Vandana ma'am, for being wonderful, a host for today. And definitely, it really matters that, how you can, take and proceed with a particular program. Thank you so much.
Pleasure, ma'am. It's really a great opportunity to be with the team. And I must not forget to mention and thank our technical
Ma'am,
team.
I just wanted to remind
Yes.
that if any students have missed the program, yesterday's and today's, as Gokul sir has mentioned,
Yes,
they
ma'am.
can check in the YouTube.
Correct, ma'am.
Sure,
Correct.
sure.
Definitely. We will put that
Students,
immediately.
yeah. Dear
Yes.
students, the
And yes,
recordings
ma'am.
will be available on the YouTube channel. Please don't forget to watch it. If any of your friends have missed it, you can still watch it in the YouTube. We'll be uploading by the end of the day today.
I request all the students to fill the Google form, which would be, sent now, to make and mark the attendance as well.
Yes. Dear students, the feedback link is posted in the chat box. Lastly, I would like to thank the technical team, Nandini ma'am and Gokul sir, to be along with me from the Department of Commerce for giving this immense support in smooth conduct of this program. Thank you once again, Gokul sir and Nandini ma'am.
Thank you, Gokul
Thank you so
sir,
much.
and thank you, Nandini ma'am. Thank you for that support. Because technical support is very important when you are doing very remotely. It is really required, without having any problems in the connections. Thank you so much, and really, to be wonderful to be associated with the department. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, ma'am.
Lastly, I would thank all the students for their active participation and patience, even on a Saturday. You've spent your time. I guess all of you have been benefited by this. So once again, thank you one and all. Have a beautiful day ahead. Get vaccinated and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Anupama ma'am. Thank you, Vandana.
Pleasure,
Thank you,
ma'am.
ma'am. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
too.
Thank you so much. It was a nice session.
Thank you,
Thank you,
ma'am.
ma'am. Thank you, Hari.